खोल दी सारी। Okay, so hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the Edu for IAS, the live Hindu class. Today the date is 4th of August. Before we start our discussion related to the Hindus, today's Hindu, first of all let us discuss quickly the questions that were being given to you in the before yesterday's class. Means day before yesterday only. We could not have class yesterday because of some technical issues. So let us first quickly solve these questions, then we'll be starting our discussion. Okay, so the first question is, consider the following statement with respect to the no trust motion. No trust motion. So first is no trust motion. When you are talking about no trust motion, first statement, it can be only introduced in the house of people, and house of people is known as Lok Sabha basically. Okay. Second statement is the final authority with respect to the assigning of time and date of debate over the motion rests with the chairman of Rajya Sabha. So you were asked to actually choose the correct answer. So what is correct answer according to you? You can put the same in the comment section as well. You can put your options in the comment section. Fine. So this was related to the no trust motion. Question was related to no trust motion. Remember, it can only be introduced in the House of People. That's correct. Fine, in the Lok Sabha. Because why? The reason is because no trust motion. Like, what exactly is this motion? This motion actually being introduced in the Lok Sabha, the lower house, whereby this motion is actually going to check whether or put question over the current government, over whether this government is in majority or has lost the confidence. Fine. So this particular motion requires the support of at least 50 members. Remember, एक बहुत important condition हो ये कि कम से कम 50 लोग सपोर्ट में होने चाहिए इस मोशन के, तभी ये इंट्रोड्यूस किया जा सकता है लोकसभा में. ठीक है. Okay, so first is correct, absolutely correct. Second is the final authority with respect to the assigning of time and date of debate over the motion rests with the chairman Rajya Sabha. No, when this can be introduced only in the House of People, then House of People Lok Sabha में कौन होता है? Speaker. So this authority or final authority rests with whom? The speaker, and not the chairman Rajya Sabha, because we are saying that this can only be introduced in the Lok Sabha. ठीक है. So इसलिए second statement आपका wrong है, first correct है. Then what would be the correct option here? Only one. Fine. This would be the correct. That is only one. Not working. Only one. Fine. So A is the right answer for this question. Second question was related to critically examine the Forest Conservation Act with respect to the recent amendments being made in it. So we discussed this article on 2nd of August. Fine. Day before yesterday, there was a smaller article related to what can amended Forest Act change. Okay, this was the article, and on the basis of this article, actually I framed this question. This is 10 marker, 150 words. So how you can frame your answer for this particular question? Remember, first of all, you need to start your answer since this is a current based question. ठीक है कि अभी अभी amendment हुई है, तो you can start your introduction with the current this context as well. For example, recently the government of India brought an amendment to the Forest Conservation Act. ठीक है. Bill 2023, whereby the aim or the objective of this bill is to restrict conservation scope, exempt borderlands for strategic projects, and allow some non-forest activities. So this much could be your introduction from this article itself. After that, now shifting to the for example, we had discussed that how we can write the answer for this. So that was, you can start with IBC, like pen is not working, so it could be like this IBC format. Let me open the PPT for this purpose. Okay. So how you can write answer for this? Forest Conservation Act 10 मार्कर 150 वर्ड्स में आपको लिखना है ये क्वेश्चन, ठीक है. So we'll be following the IBC rule, that is intro, body and conclusion. Intro I have already told you. Now about the body. So in body parts you need to mention certain keywords like since we in the introductory part itself you have mentioned that the aim of this bill is to restrict the scope of the act or restrict conservation scope. So how this is going to actually restrict, you need to just explain in few sentences, fine, or few lines. So you can say that the bill actually stipulates that only those lands that were notified as forest under the Indian Forest Act. So what would be the keywords in your body? Indian Forest Act 1927. Fine. This was introduced during the colonial era. So these are the important keywords which should be there in your answers, on the basis of which actually you get the marks. So this is the first thing. After that, any other relevant law or were recorded as forest in government records will be acknowledged as forest under this act as well. Okay, so even Amendment Act as well. But here comes the question, and that is a Supreme Court judgment in Goda Varman case. Goda Varman judgment you can write down like this. Judgment, you can put the year as well, 1996, of the Apex Court or the Supreme Court. Now, what Supreme Court underlined in this particular judgment? So again, you need to mention, these are again the keywords. Keywords are those actually important elements of your answer which should be there in order to fetch a good marks, because even examiner looks for such keywords whether you have mentioned them or not. So Goda Varman judgment, in which SC says that the definition of forest would be basically the dictionary meaning of forest. Fine. And dictionary meaning of the word forest is any large area with significant tree cover and undergrowth. Fine. So according to Supreme Court, this is the definition of your word forest, that is dictionary meaning. But now you can change the track. But even after almost 30 years, many states are yet to complete this exercise of defining the forest and all. Further, you can write down that this amendment opens up all land that hasn't been officially classified as forest to commercial activity. Fine. And also it removes the checks and balances the act currently includes in the form of forest clearance permissions and the informal consent of the local community. So these are the downsides. Okay? So you need to balance your answer. First 2 points should be the positive one and next 2 can be the negative ones in order to balance your or be neutral in your explanation. Since the question was critically examined, so of course you need to mention the criticism as well, and the article was talking more about the criticism part, so therefore you also need to mention. But remember, you also need to mention the positive aspects as well, not just the negative ones. Okay, apart from that, you can also mention the certain exemption for the border infrastructure projects that have been given, because it is now going to be the complete discretion of the central government, that from the 100 kilometers of national border, in the areas from the 100 kilometers of national border, the central government can give exemption for construction of highways or border roads. Okay? So these things could be mentioned as the downsides of this amendment. Now the conclusion or the way forward. So IBC, now coming to the conclusion part. So in conclusion or remarks or way forward, you can say that though JPC was constituted, joint parliamentary committee has been constituted for this purpose, but JPC did not propose a single change to the bill in its report. But or however, 6 members of the JPC actually wrote dissent notes, and these dissent notes should be taken into account. Fine. So इनको ओवरलुक नहीं करना जो डिसेंट जो 6 मेंबर्स ने नोट दिए. आउट ऑफ जेपीसी में 32 मेंबर्स होते हैं, आउट ऑफ दैट 6 मेंबर्स हैव गिवन डिसेंट नोट, मींस दे वर नॉट इन agreement with what the majority says. Fine. So therefore this can also be mentioned as a way forward or solution. Further, it is also a drastic break from the legal definition of forest. It is its focus on creating carbon sinks and the uncertainty over its coverage don't bode well. Fine. So you can also mention these are the things, carbon sinks and uncertainty over its coverage. So these are again the important keywords. So at least you see 5 to 6 keywords should be there in your answer. Now how to self evaluate this question? अगर आप में से जिसने भी आंसर लिखा है, आपको लिखना चाहिए. करंट बेस्ड क्वेश्चंस हैं, इस तरह से क्वेश्चंस आते हैं करंट रिलेटेड मोस्टली. तो जिसमें कि इस क्वेश्चन में सिर्फ करंट नहीं है, इसमें आपको हिस्टोरिकल बैकग्राउंड भी देखना है. सपोज इन दिस इंडियन फॉरेस्ट एक्ट, तो आपको पता होना चाहिए कब आया, कैसे आया, ये केस रिलेटेड टू जजमेंट, वन केस रिलेटेड टू दिस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक. सो ये भी आपको पता होना चाहिए. सो these are the static part, these are the dynamic part, the current ones. तो जिसने भी आप में से ये 5-6 keywords अपने आंसर्स में लिखे हैं, please give yourself at least out of 10 you can give yourself 4 marks. ठीक है. बट जिसने नहीं लिखे हैं उसके कम नंबर होंगे उससे भी. ठीक है. So please keep on practicing. Now what I have discussed, you can again write this question. ठीक है. Again go through this article and then again write down. ठीक है. So it's all about keep practicing, write again and again. Fine. Okay. Why I'm saying 4 marks out of 10? Because even the toppers don't get more than 5.5 marks. ठीक है, out of 10. So you see the 50% with the 50 and 52% you are the rank 1 holder. ठीक है. So इसलिए might fail की इतने कम ऐसा नहीं है, यहाँ पे इतना ही बहुत है. ठीक है. So this is about the 2 questions discussion. Again I have framed 2 questions from the today's newspaper as well, which will be will be forwarded to you, as well as I will be showing you at the end of our discussion. Before that, now let us start with the today's newspaper. Okay. Okay, so as we know, the date is 4th of this August today, and we are starting with the Hindu analysis or live Hindu discussion. So first page पे कुछ खास नहीं है, आप देख सकते हो. Not first, but I would be saying cover page. All advertisements from here begins your first page or the front page. So what else important? So quickly, government imposes curbs on import of laptops and tablets. ठीक है, तो government ने import पे ban लगा दिया है. ठीक है. So new regulations required import licenses with immediate effect. Move will hit short-term availability of Dell, HP, Apple laptops, but will be a boost for domestic sector. Some devices given exemption. So you see China's iron grip. In financial year 22-23, India imported 9,446 million dollars worth of laptops from China. Hong Kong was a distant second. Hong Kong had just share of 1442 million dollars, and China almost 9500 million dollars. ठीक है. So you can see somewhere the government wants to encourage or boost domestic production. Therefore, every government is independent, has a sovereign right to take such measures. Fine, to curb the imports. So that could be you can see it as a good initiative for boosting our domestic manufacturing or domestic exports in this production of the laptops. Over 9 lakh trees likely to be axed for Great Nicobar project. So government is going to come, already there is an ambitious project of government of India, 72,000 crore Great Nicobar project. ठीक है. So this is expectation that this might result in axing of around 9.6 lakh trees. Fine. So The project includes the construction of transshipment port, an international airport, a township, this 450 this gas and solar based power plant on the Great Nicobar Island. अंडमान एंड निकोबार की हम बात कर रहे हैं, पर्टिकुलरली अबाउट द ग्रेट निकोबार आइलैंड. ठीक है, तो ये ध्यान रखना. The Great Nicobar project, which is likely to come up over 130 square kilometer of pristine forest, has been accorded environmental clearance by an expert committee. I have told you even 2 days back that in any case, projects related to the environment, whenever you are coming to the projects in especially the forest areas and in such sensitive areas, islands and all, you need to you have to get the environment clearance from the Ministry of Environment itself first. So of course this is a government project, so you can understand that without undue any difficulties or delays, clearance could be made with ease. So this is strategic importance. The project is of strategic importance because the location of Andaman and Nicobar itself is very, very important for us, and this is the homework for you. Please go and locate the today's this Andaman and Nicobar Island in particular. There are many things from this 10-degree channel and 11-degree channel and all, plus the locations, the areas, particularly the Nicobar Island and Andaman Nicobar Island. Locate the the line which actually distinguishes or divides this Andaman and Nicobar, and then from north to south, south to north, east to west, try to see these locations of particular islands. ठीक है, so this is important from this. ओके, लोकसभा पासिस दिल्ली सर्विसेज बिल. तो लोकसभा ने, जो कि हम डिस्कस कर चुके हैं काफी बार, जो कि एलजी को पावर देता है इन ऑर्डर टू अपॉइंटमेंट ऑफ ग्रुप ए सब दिस सिविल सर्वेंट्स स्पेशली. ठीक है, तो फाइनली दिस हैज बीन पास्ड बाय लोकसभा. फाइन, बट अवेटिंग द पासिंग फ्रॉम राज्यसभा. चलो, मणिपुर एससी सुप्रीम कोर्ट में, जैसा कि आपको पता है, पहले ही बताया था मैंने कि जो आर्टिकल 370 की दिस एब्रोगेशन की थी सरकार ने, गवर्नमेंट ने इन 2019, उस पर आजकल हियरिंग चल रही है, एंड उस पर सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने क्वेश्चन पूछा है कि कैन यू इक्वेट आर्टिकल 370 विद बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर. तो बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर आर द सर्टन बेसिक फीचर्स ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन विच कैन नॉट बी टेकन अवे बाय द गवर्नमेंट एंड कैन नॉट बी अमेंडेड. लेट अस से फॉर एग्जांपल फंडामेंटल राइट्स. ठीक है, though there are certain exemptions ended, for example freedom of speech and expression has certain exemptions, I mean the ground of exemptions as well. Okay, but more or less these are the important basic features which cannot be taken away by the government. ठीक है, तो ये जो जिसने प्ली फाइल किया एक्चुअली उनसे ये क्वेश्चन पूछा था सीजीआई ने. ओके, ज्ञान वापी में जो इलाहाबाद हाई कोर्ट है उसने कह दिया था कि ऐसा ही सर्वे हो कर सकता है ज्ञान वापी जो एरिया है, मॉस्क एरिया, बट ज्ञान वापी पैनल हैज मूव टू सुप्रीम कोर्ट आफ्टर दिस एसी जजमेंट. नाउ सिटी पेज दैट इज फ्रॉम दिल्ली, तो इसको आप देख सकते हो. जो दिल्ली से ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं, प्लीज डू रीड वंस, be aware of what's going on around you. चलो क्विकली फिर हम चलते हैं स्टेट्स पे. मोर और लेस यू सी वायलेंस एंड पॉलिटिक्स ओनली, ब्लेम गेम, so need not to go into that. Again states, you can see politics. ठीक है, चलो so quickly next you see again 19 MLAs and 10 MPs caught for traffic offenses by AI cameras. You see, Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala में. ठीक है, so not just the citizens but even MPs and MLAs, now being caught by AI-based cameras, especially for violation of traffic rules. So finally, we'll be shifting to the editorial page. the most important page of any newspaper. Okay, and there are important articles from today's edition of this paper. Okay, and first is nuclear signaling, the need for new guardrails. तो इस आर्टिकल में basically राकेश सूद जी जो है, he is a former ambassador diplomat. He has served as conference on disarmament in Geneva and also being the prime minister special envoy for nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. So he is the right person to have written over this topic. So what is the background of related to this? Why talking about nuclear signaling? So remember, I hope all of us have this idea, and many of times we have discussed this in our current affairs classes as well, that what's going on between Ukraine and Russia, Russian-Ukraine conflict. So Russian-Ukraine conflict जो चल रहा है, इसमें let me use the PPT itself in order to explain you this better. Okay, so under this article, he is talking about this nuclear signaling, and this is in context to Russian-Ukraine conflict. This conflict actually began in the February 2022, marking almost 1.5 years. ठीक है? Remember, during this conflict, what happened with the Russian offensive? You can say initially, US and other Western nations, which belongs to a group called NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. ठीक है? So NATO versus Russia, you can say Russian Federation. ठीक है? यूक्रेन तो है ही है, but Ukraine is being supported by NATO. ठीक? So this is the issue. NATO क्या है अब? NATO is a North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Basically, it's an organization of 29 European nations plus 2 North American nations, that is US and Canada. Fine. So this is a 31 member bloc. Finland has latest joined this bloc. The recently joined is Finland, and Sweden is in process to negotiate the same. So 31 plus 1 and plus 1 is negotiating. Even Ukraine wants to get the membership of this NATO in order to have a security cover with respect to its conflict with Russia. Fine. Now, NATO आया कब? In the year 1949 during Cold War period, and Cold War को आपको पता है 1947 something till 1991 disintegration of USSR. ठीक है, जिसका कि लीडर था रशिया. So कोल्ड वॉर एरा चला इस टाइम तक. इसके बाद इसी बीच में 1949 में आपका बना NATO, and NATO came into being with through a treaty called NATO Treaty itself, or the other name of this treaty is Washington Treaty. ठीक है, 1949. NATO जो है, it works on a basic principle of political theory, and that is collective security. Collective security. What does it mean now? So it simply means कि जो भी इस NATO का मेंबर है, 31 मेंबर लेट अस से, करंटली 32. सो अगर इसमें से किसी के भी ऊपर, सिंगल कंट्री लेट अस से, अगर किसी के भी ऊपर इसमें से आउट ऑफ 32 अगर रशिया सपोज अटैक कर देता है, तो दे विल कलेक्टिवली रिस्पॉन्ड टू द रशियन अटैक. दिस इज द मीनिंग ऑफ कलेक्टिव सिक्योरिटी. ठीक है, मींस अटैक on one member would be perceived as attack on the whole bloc or all the nations. Fine, and then they will reciprocate with the same might. ठीक है, so this is basically the concept of your NATO. Now the whole issue is NATO alliance or NATO group is actually, you can say fighting a proxy war. Now what is proxy war? So during Cold War time, Cold War, because there was not direct confrontation between, at the level of military between Russia and US, but more or less it was a sanction based. ठीक है, कोई sanction लगा दिया. Proxy wars means they are not directly in a confrontation or fighting war, rather they are bringing other countries, ठीक है, like this during this period we had Korean wars, we had Vietnam wars, we had Cuban Missile Crisis and all, means they are, you know, somewhere the two nations are fighting a proxy war with the, you know, bringing other nations in conflict, or you know, this putting other nations in problematic situations, for example Vietnam war, Korean war, तो इस वजह से हुए थे। तो कोल्ड वॉर टाइम के बाद से, उसके बाद नेटो, आज के टाइम में जो प्रेजेंट है कि रशिया का जो ऑब्जेक्टिव था कि कहीं ना कहीं हम यूक्रेन को, यू नो, जैसे क्रीमिया को कैप्चर कर लिया था, रशिया ने एनेक्स कर लिया था इन द ईयर 2014। Crimea was annexed by Russia. Crimea is basically an island in the eastern Europe, which is, and location अगर आप देखोगे तो this is located in the northern coast of Black Sea, ठीक है। तो it's a smaller island जिसको कि कैप्चर कर लिया था, एनेक्स कर लिया था रशिया ने 2014। So Russian objective was to, you know, somewhere take control of, you can say, Ukraine, or to, you know, make such a thing that Ukraine won't be you know, be projected, or Ukraine altogether won't be problematic for Russia, let us say. But this conflict is being persisting even today, and that is because the single reason is Ukraine is being supported by NATO through, you know, military this, or you can say equipments as well. Many of the countries, be it Germany, France, and also supplying arms and ammunition. So of course that's why this conflict is still going on. This is one of the reasons. Now what is the present status? So the issue is Russia is all alone. One, you know, even China is though supporting Russia, Iran is supporting Russia, then Belarus is with Russia. Belarus is a neighboring country especially, okay, China and Iran, because, you know, someone's, you know, enemy is your friend actually. So Russia, Iran and China is, you know, they are not sharing good relation with US, so therefore they are actually with Russia, fine, and not with US. So I hope you can understand. Along another, you know, you can see a kind of block again emerging, like one block NATO, the other Russia and its allies, China and this Iran and all, but though China is not openly supporting Russia. So this is the present status. Now what is happening? So after this 1.5 years of war, if the Russia has been almost, you can say, failed to achieve its intended objective, fine, in order to get hold over Ukraine. But what is happening now? Because another issue that why Russia, you know, tried to you know, attack Ukraine was the reason that Ukraine was trying to get the NATO membership, ठीक है, and because Ukraine is at the doorstep of Russia, ठीक है, border लगता है, तो of course Russia cannot tolerate that NATO comes to its, you know, border, ठीक है, और this NATO bloc reaches the Russian door, ठीक है। So इसलिए this conflict is still going on because Ukraine has been supported by NATO. So वहां से सारा कुछ सप्लाई हो रहा है, तो therefore Ukraine has no issue in as such in continuing with this conflict. But now Russian ने, because almost failed to achieve the intended results or objective, Russian president ने time and again, even Russian की जो सरकार है या their ministers as well, they were talking about nuclear attacks, ठीक है। So this article is all about this nuclear attack signaling that Russian leaders, even President Vladimir Putin has talked about the nuclear attacks, fine, but with certain, you know, rationality. It's not like you are going to attack, but with a certain rationality. And what are they? These rationalities will be now discussing this with the help of the article. ठीक है, already mentioned there. चलो. So this is all the background. Now deterrence. So what is deterrence? Deterrence has been was in you know, in vogue even during Cold Wars. Deterrence होता है कि कुछ भी ऐसे deter करना, रोकना किसी को, ठीक है, means stopping someone from taking such action. And how you can stop? By, you know, letting that party know the ultimate consequences of his its action. ठीक है कि अगर रशिया न्यूक्लियर अटैक सपोज करता है यूक्रेन पे तो उसको बता दो या डेटर करो इस चीज से, and ultimately showing Russia the consequences of the same. So this is what actually the Western allies and you can say NATO is actually doing. ठीक है, so deterrence की कोशिश हो रही है दोनों साइड से. It's not like they are going to attack each other because they know or they are very much aware of the consequences of such war, and this President Biden has already cleared this thing that we do not want third world war. ठीक है, so this has been made very much clear by President of US already. ठीक है, so what exactly the President of US said is Mr. Biden declared on April 24, we are neither encouraging nor enabling Ukraine to strike beyond its borders, adding that the US was not seeking regime change in Russia. In short, the US objectives were to support Ukraine, bolster NATO unity, and avoid any direct conflict with Russia. So you can see this objectives of US. Ukraine is not a NATO member, so does not have the security of the nuclear umbrella provided by the US policy of extended deterrence. ठीक है, Russia's resort to nuclear rhetoric failed to deter NATO involvement through its influence, though its influence is pace and timing. So of course, somewhere, you know, this is used as a rhetoric. Rhetoric is something which is, you know, you are talking a lot about it, fine, through either writing or through speeches, but in actual, in real sense, is not going to be manifested. ठीक है, so something like that, and it is used as a tool to actually deter the other party from making such kind of attacks, especially the nuclear wars. So Cold War lessons. This is important, especially for us after knowing the background, what's going on. So Cold War lessons. Deterrence is fundamentally based on the assumption that both adversaries are rational enough to judge when costs outweigh the benefits of the act. Nuclear deterrence adds a conundrum. Conundrum is a confusing situation, or you can say confusing question or difficult situation actually, with their huge arsenals that provided for a short second strike capability. Second strike capability means if first Russia is attacking to, let us say, Ukraine, then of course there would be simultaneously second strike or second attack by the NATO. Neither the US nor the Soviet Union had an incentive to try a surprise first strike, but none of them would like to go with the first strike, fine, because they are aware of this fact, and this awareness of the second strike by another party actually acts as a deterrence, ठीक है, over the first attack. This realization was crucial in shaping nuclear deterrence theory. Now there are persons, two economists especially, three economists in fact, so that's why this paragraph is important for us. Thomas Schelling, whose writings during the 1960s and 70s, especially during the Cold War era, shaped nuclear deterrence thinking. He owned the economics novel in 2005, remember, concluded that nuclear weapons were not usable but had political utility in terms of preventing a war with another nuclear power. You can see nuclear powers, जैसे आज कहते हैं कि बड़े सारे even Indian, Pakistan, are nuclear states, but in nuclear nuclear weapons are not usable in the sense because every single country having nuclear weapons is very much aware of its consequences, ठीक है. So therefore, this has less utility in terms of usability, but more in terms of preventing a war with another nuclear power. This means act as a deterrence for the another country or another power. Clearly, Schelling was looking at the situation between the US and Soviet Union, which had no territorial dispute. So remember, India, Pakistan, India, China जैसे इन दोनों कंट्री के बीच में territorial dispute नहीं है, because locations अगर आप देखोगे तो दोनों बहुत अलग-अलग जगह पे हैं. Schelling also concluded that even though any use was irrational, the nuclear threat had to be credible in order to deter. This introduced a degree of uncertainty into, but Schelling ने ये कहा कि even though any use was irrational of nuclear weapons, nuclear threat had to be credible. Threat जो है वो credible होना चाहिए. ऐसे नहीं कि अब पाकिस्तान वाले भी धमकी देते हैं, दो उनके पास nuclear arsenals जो weapons है वो ज़्यादा है हमारे से, या for example एक नॉन न्यूक्लियर स्टेट अगर धमकी देता है या ऐसा कुछ, तो कहने का मतलब कि प्रोपोर्शनल एंड क्रेडिबल एक थ्रेट होना चाहिए, ठीक है, डेटरेंस होनी चाहिए, थ्रेट होना चाहिए इन ऑर्डर टू डेटर द अदर पार्टी, मतलब ऐसा ना लगे कि सामने वाला कमजोर है तो उस पर अटैक कर सकते हैं, कोई बात नहीं, ठीक है, दैट शुड बी अ क्रेडिबल वन, ठीक है. Using his economics training, actually, he interpreted the uncertainty as a risk that could be analyzed in terms of probabilities. Okay, so he analyzed or interpreted the uncertainty as risk. So this is his contribution in economics, where he talks about uncertainty to be a risk. Risk was intended to induce rationality in the adversaries. Realizing the conundrum, he concluded that the key to making nuclear deterrence credible is through escalation and raising the risk. Okay, so he said that the credibility to nuclear deterrence lies in escalating and raising the risk, that in the final analysis leaves something to chance. This, along with the lessons of the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, kept the US and Soviet rhetoric in check during the Cold War, even as they engaged in proxy wars outside Europe and away from NATO and Warsaw Pact. So NATO, is a bloc of the European nation plus US and Canada. Warsaw Pact was basically the pact related to the Russian Soviet Union members. ठीक है, Belarus and all used to be the part of this, Finland, Sweden, all together being part of. So there are many Warsaw countries or Soviet Union bloc countries which are today the part of your NATO. So things keeps on changing with time. Today there is no Warsaw Pact and NATO has expanded to include a number of former Warsaw Pact members. The Ukraine conflict has persuaded Sweden and Finland to give up their long-standing neutrality and seek security under NATO's nuclear umbrella. That's why they are seeking to be the member of this. Okay. Now probing for red lines. So Russia nuclear doctrine जो है that issued on June 2, 2020 specifies two conditions under which Russia would use nuclear weapons. And these conditions are: first, in response to the use of nuclear weapons and other types of weapons of mass destruction against it or its allies. ठीक है? Or in the case of aggression against the Russian Federation with the use of conventional weapons, when the very existence of the state is put under threat. So this is the first stated objective or the doctrine or the conditions actually under which the Russia can use the nuclear these weapons or strike this with the help of nuclear weapons. The second is there is the often cited escalate to de-escalate approach. Escalation करो तो कि de-escalation means again act as a deterrence. Fine, इतनी ज़्यादा बात करो nuclear attack की कि सामने वाली की situation जो है de-escalate हो जाए. जो deterrence है वो दोनों पार्टी के लिए applicable. That implies using tactical nuclear weapons to overcome a stalemate on the battlefield, thus forcing termination of hostility on favorable terms. Fine. So these are the issues. Now, what should be the way forward? The path-breaking studies of Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky in economics showed that humans often tend to double down on bad bets because of loss aversion. Loss aversion, risk lover and risk averter, fine, that you don't like actually, loss making. So you double down on bad bets, fine. Though you know that you are going to lose, still you double down on your bad bets in order to, because you are a loss averter. The Cold War escalation management lessons apply to different world. Today the US and Russia no longer enjoy parity and Russia's red lines are fuzzy. ठीक है, so Russia की भी कहीं ना कहीं power जो है कम हुई है, but still Russia is a powerful country, especially with the nuclear this weapons. So of course it cannot be underestimated. Nuclear signaling today is taking place in uncharted political territory. New guardrails means new mechanism, new safeguards, new treaties are necessary if the nuclear taboos has to be preserved. ठीक है? So this is again an important piece of article by one of the finest ambassadors. Next related to India needs evidence-based ethics-driven medicine. So this article is more or less about the importance of homeopathy, and in this article actually the writers have questioned the relevance and efficacy of actually this efficiency and efficacy of the medicine, especially the Ayush or homeopathy in particular. So the recent push to integrate Ayush medicine system into mainstream healthcare to achieve universal health coverage and decolonize medicine is a pluralistic approach. Pluralistic approach is where two kinds of different system of, let us say, medicine, for example homeopathy and allopathy, can coexist. Okay, would require every participating system to meet basic safety and efficacy standards. Homeopathy does not meet these standards. आप लोगों ने भी गोली खाई होगी होम्योपैथी की, white हाँ. So for expanding its use by citing demand decolonization disregarding its flaws. Efficacy and safety of homeopathy. So एक study हुई थी in the year, the test was called Nuremberg salt test in 1935 that noted that the symptoms of changes which the homeopaths claimed to observe as an effect of their medicines were the fruit of imagination, self-deception and preconceived opinion, if not fraud. So somewhere you see this report is totally against the efficacy of homeopathy. Okay? Now the second research in the recent times were conducted in the year, recently researchers demonstrated that more than half of 193 homeopathic trials in the last 2 decades were not registered, and unregistered trials showed some evidence of efficacy, but registered trials did not. There was reporting bias and other problematic practices, throwing validity and reliability of evidence, thus generated into doubt. Another warning by the WHO, World Health Organization, has warned against homeopathic treatment for HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, as well as flu, and so there is warning by WHO as well. So all this putting question over the efficacy of homeopathy as a system of medicine, you can say. Diarrhea, infants. So for all these purposes, homeopathy should not be used as per WHO. So there is no place of homeopathy in such kind of treatments. Evidence is accumulating that homeopathy does not work for cancers and may not help to reduce the adverse effects of cancer treatment. Contrary to lay belief, instead treatments have been linked to both non-fatal and fatal adverse events as well as their aggravation. Okay. Now, in several cases it has caused injuries and sometimes even death. But now, what about those who actually support this? So homeopathy supporters argue that the standards commonly used in evidence-based medicine are not suitable for judging the holistic effects of homeopathy. So this claim can be debunked. Debunked means can be exposed through various points, and that is, there are certain arguments. First, the standards are not conveniently chosen by practitioners of allopathic medicine for themselves. ठीक है, so allopathic medicine में जो है वो खुद से चूज नहीं करते, but evidence based research होती है proper, and therefore somewhere these methods have weeded out practices in allopathic medicine that fail to meet the evidence criteria. So they are countering the homeopathy with the allopathy. Second, what are the methods that will work? Homeopathy advocates have failed to invent valid alternative evidence synthesis framework suited for testing its efficacy and safety. Third argument is the claim about homeopathy being holistic is typically paired with evidence-based medicine being reductionist. Reductionist means making, or simplifying a complex phenomena to a level of, simplicity, or reducing to such a level where it becomes simple to understand. In 2023, most exponents of evidence-based medicine are aware and accepting of biopsychosocial approaches towards health endorsed by WHO. So what is the biopsychosocial approaches that has been endorsed by WHO? Now we should be aware of this. Predominantly composed of evidence-based medicine practitioners and supporters. Fourth is evidence-based medicine does not and should not stop at establishing empirical evidence. Okay? So the quest is also to discover and explain the mechanism underlying the evidence. Okay, no mechanistic evidence to explain how concepts such as like cures, like extreme dilution is found under homeopathy. So adopting a pluralistic approach in medicine can decolonize medicine. In India, homeopathy is at odds with this. Homeopathy was introduced in 1839 in India by Austrian physician James Honigberger. Okay, so you can see in India it was introduced in 1839 by an Austrian physician. Okay. While defining traditional medicine can be subjective, homeopathy was introduced quite recently in India's history during the colonial period for colonial benefits. Hence, its traditional tag is untenable. Of course, not all colonial era practices need to be surrendered. Those with health and developmental benefits such as evidence-based elements of allopathic medicine and gender role and caste reform should be retained. So see, the writers are in favor of allopathy because these are evidence-based medicines, but not in homeopathy because they are saying there is no evidence which actually proves the efficacy of homeopathy. The argument to reject homeopathy is not just based on its coloniality, but chiefly on the lack of evidence for efficacy, some evidence for lack of safety, no substantive progress on mechanism of action in the last century, and homeopathic practitioners' escapist argument. Okay, so these are the grounds for rejecting the homeopathy as a system of medicine. Homeopathy supporters often offer testimonials from luminaries such as Gandhi and Tagore, but Gandhi's writings have scant mentions of this about homeopathy. We could not find any archival evidence of favorable comments by Tagore either for homeopathy. Hence, decolonization cannot be reason to support homeopathy. India's path to universal health care must be grounded in evidence-based and ethics-driven medicine. Yes, this is right thing, that our path to universal health coverage or health care must be grounded in evidence-based and ethics-driven medicine. This is very much correct. Next is, should the age of consent be revised in India? Fine. So this is related to cases mostly, where you see consensual kind of relationship with a minor girl. The Bombay High Court in recently a case dealing with such case said that it is the high time India consider reducing the age of consent for sex. Okay? So of course, currently, adult age is 18 years. A person is considered adult for, at the age of 18. But now many people are advocating that this age must be reduced to 16. The POCSO Act, that is Protection of Children from Sexual Offences 2012, the court pointed out that after the enactment of this POCSO Act 2012, many adolescents are being prosecuted for consensual relationships with minor girls. Should the age of consent be revised in India? So there are two persons on this today, Shraddha Chaudhary and Bharti Aliji. Fine. So both of them would be keeping their viewpoint. So there are multiple perspectives in this debate. For instance, the psychological and biological perspective as well that deal with the ability to give consent and the perspective on exercising autonomy. How should the debate in India be centered? So first is Shraddha Chaudhary's comment. We should not think of the debate in one or another of these terms. We need to take an integrated and holistic approach. Okay? She is saying you mentioned autonomy in the context of law, but can we define what autonomy really signifies? Okay? And what it means without considering things like cognitive capacity, psychosocial maturity, and emotional development. So we need a lot more axes in this debate. We need to think of experiential and neurobiological factors as well. Even economic factors might be relevant. It is most important, therefore, to keep the discussion practical in terms of what it is that we are trying to actually achieve. Now, what the other, writer, that is Bharti Ali, is saying, we want to protect children from harm, but we can't protect them by criminalizing certain activities. Okay? While we understand that a need to ensure that every child up to the age of 18 years should be entitled to all rights, including the right to be protected from harm, the fact is that children have evolving capacities which need to be recognized. Okay. Now, we often see in POCSO cases that a trial is held and then the court rules whether the second question asked to them related to sexual interaction was consensual or not. So of course this is being checked actually in the cases that whether this was a consensual or not. So can we figure out a way of measuring consent before it becomes a trial? कह रहे हैं कि क्या हम ट्रायल स्टार्ट होती है इन दिस केसेस उससे पहले ही हम इसको मेजर कर सकते हैं? कैन वी हैव सच काइंड ऑफ फिनोमिना और टूल्स टू मेजर द कंसेंट? सो फर्स्ट भारती अली जी कह रही हैं whenever adolescents approach service providers for any intervention, the biggest fear is that it will get reported. Now, even if schools, hospitals, and counselors were to report these cases, are we saying that the law must make it mandatory for every person to pursue a legal case? So she is focusing on the first, you can say first stage of such cases or reporting. So whether she is asking that we need to, report such cases, especially should we pursue a legal case in the first place? So soon after a report is made, interviews with the boy and girl should not be carried out by the police, because in such cases actually the interrogation should not be by the police, but rather the first interview should be done by a social worker or a support person, and we have those provisions in law. There are supposed to be 2 social workers with every special juvenile police unit. Juvenile less than 18 years of age, especially 16 years. These are people who can be brought into interview and interact with the children or adolescents and certain whether they wish to pursue a complaint or not. So this should be left to such kind of persons and not exactly up to the police personnel. At some level, the state is making a decision as to when or at what age a person can be competent enough to give consent. This is despite biology showing that this capacity develop differently among different people. So should the age, should state regulate such kind of things? The question. So Shraddha Chaudhary ji hai, she is saying you are right in saying that for ease of convenience we might have to indicate some sort of age or draw some line, and no matter where we draw the line, there are probably going to be issues because there are some people who won't be covered by it, and in some cases we might have different applications as well. But regardless that that is a strong case for reconfiguring the age of consent and how we understand it. So instead of saying outright that we should reduce it to 16, 15, 14 or 12, we first need to ask, when is consent relevant? And what are the questions that go beyond understanding the relevance of consent? Consent to whom and in what circumstances? So these are the certain questions which government should actually first address before actually reducing the age or so. Answers regarding age and capacity might differ based on these questions and the answers to them. Any age of consent should be context sensitive. So context is very important. It's better to look at it in terms of capacity, which will help you determine age, but different capacities for different kinds of activities for different kinds of circumstances might help us to have an understanding of consent which is more reflective of the developing capacities of the adolescents. ठीक है? The age of consent, now Bharti Ali ji कहती हैं, prior to the enactment of the POCSO was 16 in the Indian Penal Code, but cases were still being registered. So ऐसा नहीं कि एज कम करने से केसेस कम हो जाएंगी, ठीक है? So and how do we differentiate between various circumstances and situation even if it is 14 or 16 years or where both the victim and the accused are minors? Those areas require a lot more research before we can take a call. Fine. So much research awaiting, then coming to the final judgment. But even as courts recognize this fluidity in age of consent and the competency of giving consent, how is it possible to code this fluidity into the law? Is it possible? Principally, yes. Shraddha Chaudhary ji कहती हैं, one way to do it might be to have different ages of consent for different kinds of activities, but that is again something that needs to be looked into far more. So of course we need more of research, more of answering, more of addressing certain type of questions related to this. Then we can think of actually reducing the age. Now, Bharti Ali ji कहती हैं, in the first stage, is the police station, at the level of police station, someone interviews the child and is able to figure out whether the child wants to proceed with the complaint or not. In the second stage, then, she is giving a suggestions of the way out, what could be the solutions. Second stage, if an FIR is, let us say, registered and the police find out during the investigation that there was no exploitative or consensual intimacy, then they can file a final report and that can go to the court. Fine. And finally, and also what is essential is that we should not be taking away any support, any reproductive and sexual health services and access to those services from adolescents who need it. Just because the law says that a case has to be pursued, we cannot deny those services to these persons. Okay? Especially the adolescents. If the government were to decide to conduct a study tomorrow, what do we think is essential for us to find out in order to progress towards a better understanding of consent? So this question is particularly relevant, that if government thinks of conducting a study tomorrow, then what could be the essential things we can progress with. So first, need more and better information on kind of sexual practices adolescents are engaging in, at what ages, and the impact of these interactions on them. That information can help us meaningfully characterize these relationships as non-harmful and non-wrongful, and also recognize trends of grooming and exploitation that are going on. We also need to look into how social norms around sex and sexuality that lead adolescents to make decisions which may not be optimal for them. It is worth considering, third point, whether it is their best interest in their best interest for each of these sexual interactions to actually have to end in marriage, and what impact that would have on their lives. So these are the way forward, the solutions actually, the 3 points almost we can consider for these things. So you see, there is no clear-cut answer that whether age of consent should be reduced or not. Fine. That again based on, that is again something which we need to have more of research related to this and waiting and all. ठीक है, तो हमारे लिए important हो जाता है कि हम उस पे अभी. So ME hopes for normalcy in NCR ahead of G20. Fine. Now let us focus on some miscellaneous facts. Experts go back on letter raising concern about cheetah's death. So Kuno National Park mein, you can see another cheetah has died amid road data protection bill tabled in Lok Sabha yesterday. Fine. So salient features already हम इसको discuss कर चुके हैं salient features को, ठीक है. So इसमें हम डिटेल में नहीं जाएंगे. We'll be waiting for the bill to finally becomes the act, and act जब बनता है तो of course we'll be discussing whole issues related around this act. Fine, full fledged. So let us wait for the bill to become act. Okay, there is another important from the preliminary exam point of view. The UPSC actually asked questions, that is endangered Himalayan vulture bred in captivity for the first time in India. Captivity breeding means breeding somewhere, away from the natural, you can say this habitats. ठीक है. So captivity होती है कि आपने कहीं और, let us say particular farm or something like that, उनको रखा है. यहाँ पे ये कहाँ पे है? असम स्टेट जू में. So researchers have recorded the first instance of captive breeding of the Himalayan vulture. Captivity is keeping away from their natural habitat. In India at the Assam State Zoo, categorized as near threatened on the International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List of Threatened Species. So this much is important for us. ठीक है. The 2 point of information is very relevant from the exam point of view कि IUCN की red list status क्या है इस particular vulture के लिए, and where or actually this captive breeding took place. ठीक है. So 2 pieces of important informations. Now from the world page, नाइजर में coup हो चुका है, हम देख चुके हैं already. Pakistan approves signing of security pact with US. Oh, so US is going to have a pact with security pact, in fact, with Pakistan. So it could be, of course, problematic for us. Services PMI hit 30-year high in July, lifted by export surge. So this is a good news for us. Services PMI की बात करें, Purchasing Managers Index. It has registered 13 years high of 62.3. मैंने पहले भी बात किया कि 50 is the benchmark. 50 plus अगर ये है तो this is showing expansion. 50 से कम है तो showing contraction with respect to the previous year, because it comes on monthly basis. PMI released, ठीक है, तो फिगर जो है मंथली बेसिस पे रिलीज होती है, कंपेयर कर सकते हैं. नाउ वी फाइनली लैंडेड ऑन द स्पोर्ट्स पेज. ठीक है. So you see, that's these were the important articles, miscellaneous facts, important from the both prelims as well as mains point of view. Fine. So that's it about this today's Hindu analysis. Now I will be discussing or showing you the questions from the today's this Hindu newspaper that you need to attempt 4th August. Since consider the following statement with respect to the Himalayan vulture. The first instance of captive breeding of the Himalayan vulture, that is Gypsy himalayensis, has been recorded at the Assam State Zoo, Guwahati, and it is listed as endangered under the IUCN Red List. You need to choose the correct answer. Come up with the correct answer. Tomorrow we'll be discussing the same. Now, second question from the men's perspective, that is, should the age of consent be revised in India? Critically examine this statement. Again, for 10 marks, 150 words. You need to write in 150 words. Okay? So these are the 2 questions. These will be shared in respective groups as well. Okay? Or you can take the screenshot as well. Fine. So that's it as far as today's Hindu analysis is concerned. We have discussed the answers of the previous questions as well. Okay? And we'll be discussing these questions tomorrow. Okay? So find the correct answers. Write the answer of the second specific subjective question as well. Okay? If you have any query, you can put the same in the comment section. Otherwise, keep revising. ठीक है, stay tuned for tomorrow's live Hindu class. Thank you.